So are you on crutches, Deb?
Yeah, it's crutches and a soft cast. So I do get to take showers and stuff like that, which is really nice. And I've been planning like this whole. I have this plot of all these things that I could try to do with one leg. It's amazing how resourceful you become in your mind. So I was thinking I could buy one of those kayaks that don't have the deep wells, and we could launch it at the boat ramp. And all I have to do is wade in with one foot and sit. Anyway, it's gotten to that point. But
Hey, Deb, if I can ask you, where were you hiking when you had your accident?
We spent a lot of time up in Maine. There's actually Harpswell, where the shark attack was.
Oh dear.
But
Wow.
it was midpoint. It wasn't at the location that the accident happened. But yeah, Harpswell.
So John, I think Sundar is on vacation, correct?
Yes.
College trip.
That's right. I guess I don't know if I call it a vacation or not, but he is away for personal matters and something other than the planning board. And then I don't see Rob yet, and I haven't heard anything from him. Have you, John?
No.
No. Okay.
Randy?
Bob, are we? I saw you click on the video there. Are we ready to go?
Yes, Bob just texted me. We are ready to go. We are live on HCAM.
Okay, well, I guess then I will call to order our planning board meeting for Monday, August 10th. It is 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Before we go into the meeting, I'm just going to read a quick statement with regards to remotely conducted open meetings. So this is a required statement that I'm going to read through pretty quickly. As a preliminary matter, this is Gary Trendle, Planning Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. So Gary Trendle present. Jane Moran.
Jane Moran present.
Rob Benson is not here. Dave Paul.
Dave Paul present.
Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe present.
And Deb Feinbrug.
Deb Feinbrug here.
Muriel Kramer.
Muriel Kramer present.
And Sundar is not here either. Did I miss somebody? Or did we just go through that quickly? Myself, Mary, Jane, Deb, Muriel, and Dave. Okay, so that's it. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Gelsich.
Gelsich present.
Ms. Pemberton.
Stephanie Pemberton present.
And then I don't think Mr. Paradise is on the call today or anybody from Beta.
Nope.
And then anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. I saw Lou Petrozzi, and Lou, you're unmuted, so I know you're going to be speaking tonight. Oh, just got muted, but I think we can move forward. All right, so good evening. This opening meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you will find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. It will further include potentially a public hearing. For the meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may be broadcast by HCAM through one of its many channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials, all supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We will shortly turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear communication of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. Number one, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comments as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair, and then I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote will be taken. Each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by roll call vote, since we are virtual. So quickly from an agenda perspective, we've got a little heavier on the administrative front, and I'm going to restructure the order a little bit. The first thing we'll go through is the board appointments. Secondly, we will talk, at least on a preliminary basis, about master plan implementation and action items, and I'm appreciative for Muriel taking the lead on this. Third, we will go to the zoning articles for town meeting, and just as a reminder, these are all articles that were previously approved back in March, I believe. But because they are not going to town meeting within a 6-month window, we will have to reopen the hearing and take a new vote. We have an A&R for Leonard Street. And then potentially we have one other public hearing on the agenda for Buckland and Leonard Street. But there may be some overlap with the A&R. And then lastly, any other business, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the meeting. And just noticed Rob is on, so nice to see you, Rob. Welcome back. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to open the public hearings for the zoning articles for town meeting, as well as the continued public hearing for Buckland Street and Leonard Street.
So moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Thanks, Mary. All right. In light of no discussion, we'll move to the roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran.
Jane Moran, yes.
Deb Feinberg.
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel Kramer.
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave Paul.
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob Benson.
Rob Benson, yes.
And Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. So let's get to the board appointments. And we've got 2 boards that we want to go through tonight, the Zoning Advisory Committee as well as the Design Review Board. Just as I see Amy is also calling in, we didn't get it in time for this agenda item, but we also will need to choose a new representative for the Planning Board on the Growth Study Committee, and that committee has been stalled out a little bit with COVID, but given that is a subcommittee that rolls up to the Planning Board with Amy moving on to the Select Board. That's a position that it's not entirely clear in the bylaws, but I think it's going to make sense for us to appoint a new representative, second representative from the Planning Board to that committee. So no discussion there, but we'll go ahead and talk about that at our next meeting. So I thought what we'd do is we'd start with the zoning advisory committee. And John, do you just want to really quickly summarize the applicants as well as the number of spots that we are looking to fill?
So this may get a little complicated, and I apologize up front because I don't have access to the applications as they're received. Elaine is on vacation, and IT is kind of doing 50 other things while they're getting it. So that's why I was sending you all the applications kind of in different times. And I think I got all of them out to you guys today. So hopefully you had a chance to look at those. So for Zach, the first applicant is Rhea McNamara. She does not need to be reappointed because she is a ZBA appointee. So the ZBA will put forth their choice for their representative, and the board doesn't really have to do anything about that. John Catino is the second applicant. He is still within his term, so he does not need to be reappointed. Jim Cirillo, he applied for the ZAC. Madhu Chandrasekhar applied. She is currently on ZAC. And that is it. So, given all of that, I believe we have 4 openings on ZAC. If I can pull up the right thing. And I'll also mention that Mary is on ZAC as the chair. She's the planning board representative. So she or somebody else on the planning board would need to be reappointed as well.
Okay, so we've got a planning board appointment. We have 4 open spots, and we have 2 applicants that applied for those 2 spots that are actually up, who don't have a current seat. Is that, hang on one sec, Mariel, is that correct, John?
So 4 open spots, 2 applicants. One is a new applicant, one is an incumbent. Yes.
Yes.
Two applicants for 4 spots.
Yes. Okay. Mariel, did you have a question or a comment?
I just wanted to ask, have Carol and Elise said they don't want to come back? Or
I have not heard anything from Carol. Elise reached out to me and asked if we were going to be virtual for the foreseeable future, but other than that, I haven't heard anything.
okay. I just wanted to be clear whether those seats were, they didn't want them anymore, or we hadn't heard from them.
They have been notified, and I sent an email saying your seats are up and you need to reapply.
Okay, great.
All right. So I'm going to recommend we split this into 2. One of them is the planning board appointee, and then we'll discuss the people that have applied. And I think this should be relatively straightforward. But I'll begin with, and actually, I'll just see if we can make this short and sweet. I'd like to nominate Mary Larson Marlowe to continue on as the planning board representative to Zach.
Second, Muriel.
Thanks, Meryl. Mary, are you open to that? Would you like to continue?
Yes, I'd be fine with that. And I'd also like to say that it would be fine also to have additional planning board members be on the ZAC. It would be great.
Yes. Any further discussion about the motion to appoint Mary as the planning board representative to Zach? If not, then we'll move to the roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran?
Jane Moran, yes. And I really want to thank you, Mary, for all the hard work you've put into it already.
Thank you.
Deb Feinberg?
Deb Feinberg, yes. And also Mary should be congratulated for just the dedication it takes to put all this forward.
Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, and I also want to add my thank yous. Mary, you have transformed the ZAC. It's always been a great board, but this approach and your leadership has really made a substantial difference. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Dave Paul?
Dave Paul, resounding yes.
Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, yes.
And last but not least, Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
All right. Well, congratulations, and excited to see you continue on, Mary. And I think I know that we are all very appreciative of the work that you've done, and I feel personally, I feel really good about how we as a board restructured the ZAC process. I think there's some improved continuity, and I look forward to I think continued really positive engagement with ZAC. So thank you for your leadership, and congratulations, and thank you. So then the other two spots, and again, I'm assuming this is going to be relatively straightforward, but I will entertain a motion to nominate Rhea McNamara and Madhu, and I don't have her.
Nope, not Rhea.
Yeah,
Rhea's
Rhea
the
is a
ZBA.
ZBA appointee.
You're correct. I'm sorry.
Madhu.
I'm sorry.
And I'd just like to clarify that we have people for 2-year terms and people for 1-year terms. And I don't think any of these people have specified what they would prefer. So I think we should just give them 2-year terms.
I second.
And that doesn't count the liaison members. The liaison members are 1-year terms, and then and then associate members are 1-year terms. So, but I think these are all full members for 2-year terms, voting members.
Correct. Yeah, all the board representatives are 1-year terms, and all the at-large are 2-year terms. So these would be 2 at-large positions that would be appointed. So they would be 2-year terms.
Okay. So on that note, I will entertain a motion to nominate Jem Cerulli and Madhu, and I'm still trying to pull up the sheet.
Chandrasekhar?
Yes. Thank you. Nominate those two just mentioned to the Zoning Advisory Committee for a 2-year term.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, then we'll move to the roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran?
Jane Moran, yes.
Deborah Feinberg,
Yep. Go ahead, Deb.
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
And Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
All right. So congratulations to Jim and Madhu, and appreciate your service to the town if you're on the line. And to Muriel's point, to Mary's point, we do still have 2 additional spots. So if anyone on the planning board is interested, or if they know of someone from our community that is interested, I know we've always talked about this in the past, but Zach is a really, really good sort of icebreaker for town government and for getting more involved in the planning aspects. So I encourage anyone that might have interest to apply.
So Gary, there's 1 open seat because the 4 open seats included Mary's. So there's only 1 open at-large seat.
Okay.
So we're awaiting the Concom and Chamber of Commerce to assign their members, and then Rhea is assumedly the ZBA appointee as well.
Yeah, and thanks for that clarification, Mary. And I know that, John, have you been in contact with each of those people or boards just to make sure we've formalized that process so that they can continue on?
I have reached out to all of them. I've heard back from Ted and Rhea, and they're going to talk to their respective chairs. I have not heard back from Ron, but he may be on vacation.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All right. So shall we move on to the design review board? So, John, do you want to just quickly, let's not quite go through the nominees yet, but just a reminder of how many seats we're talking about, how many applicants we have, and then we can quickly go through the applicants.
Yep. So it is a 5-member board with 2 alternates. And design review is a little different than all the other boards because there are qualifications that certain seat holders need to have. So I'll go. You want me to go through those 5 positions, Gary?
Sure.
All right. So one position is the chairman of the planning board or his or her designee. One person qualified by training and experience in the fine arts or landscape design. One person doing business in the town or a citizen at large. One person qualified by training and experience in the art or design professions. And one member of the Historic District Commission or a designee of the planning board. And then the planning board can appoint 2 alternates.
Okay. And how many applicants do we have in total?
I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 6 because
6.
1 withdrew.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to really quickly go through these. And I thought what might make sense here is, since they are specific by role, that we can just talk quickly about who we think would best fit that criteria. And then my hope is, if we've got general alignment or agreement, that we can go through the nomination process for all of them at once. So from a process perspective, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Okay, so we've got Jeanette Thompson, Sue Ellen Stoddard, and I'm just quickly, this is the longer list. I don't know what I did with the short list.
You guys want me to go through?
No, I can do it.
Okay.
Amy Ritterbush has, and I see Amy on, but Amy has specifically applied for the alternate spot. She was previously a full member. Rhea McNamara, who is also an incumbent. Gregory Mays. Jeff Doherty. And that is all of them. So Julie Brown had applied, but she withdrew earlier today just to some other personal commitments or obligations. So, and just to give everybody else a sense for who's returning. So Jeanette is would be a returning member. She's been on the board previously. Sue Ellen has, Jeff Doherty has, Rhea has, Amy has was previously on the board. And is there anybody that I missed?
Deb. I was
Deb.
an alternate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Deb. So I'm just going to quickly go through my thoughts and ask for some discussion along the way. And we'll start with the chairman of the planning board or his or her designee. And I actually think that Deb would be a great fit for that spot. She's previously been an alternate. And I think just given her involvement in the planning board, as well as her architectural background, I think she'd be a great fit for that role. Just thinking if we want to go through and talk about these individually, or if it's better to just go through all of them at once. Maybe we'll quickly go through all of them, because I think that we've got enough spots for everyone that has applied. One person qualified by training and experience in the fine arts or landscape design. To me, I think Jeff Doherty fits that profile really well, given his landscape background, and again, I think ongoing engagement and support of the town. One person doing business in the town or citizen at large. We'll hold that one for a minute because that one's a little bit more open. One person qualified by training and experience in the art or design professions, and both Jeanette and Sue Ellen are licensed architects. So I think either one of them would be a good fit. And then one member of the Historic District Commission or a designee of the planning board. And I think this is one place that, I think Amy previously served in that capacity. We don't have another nominee from the Historic District Commission, but we also have some flexibility to name someone, one of the other candidates as well. So to me, I'm thinking Deb for the chairman of the planning board designee, Jeff for the fine arts or landscaping, Sue Ellen for the citizen at large, Jeanette Thompson for the experience in the art or design professions, and then Ria as the second designee of the planning board, and then we can talk about and then that would leave Amy as the alternate. And I should just say too, I think that at least with Amy staying on as an alternate, then she can help cover the Historic District Commission component of Design Review Board.
Greg
So
Mays.
I realize go ahead, John, sorry.
Greg Mays would also be.
Yes, thank you.
alternate.
I knew there was one I was missing.
We have a spot for him.
He would be an alternate.
So I'm fine with that lineup, Mr. Chair.
I am as well.
That a motion?
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to nominate the folks as described for the Design Review Board.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? All right, so we'll go ahead and move to the roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran?
Jane Moran, yes.
Sorry, my order just changed here.
Deborah
Deb Feinberg?
Feinberg, yes.
Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave Paul?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, yes.
And Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. Well, and again, thanks to all of those that volunteer. I think that's personally, that's a really, really, there's a lot of expertise and history of engagement within that board. I'm also just personally, I'm grateful for their engagement and support, because I think they really help steer the design standards of which many things that are built in Hopkinton. So thank you. And then there's one other, I know we talked that we'll address the growth committee vacancy. Actually, that's not entirely true, because I think actually we would need Amy. John, does Amy actually need to resign from the growth committee, or what's the formal process for her, because she previously served as a representative from the planning board?
I think it would be cleanest if she resigned her role from the planning board, and then if she was reappointed by the select board, if that's how she's going to serve.
Got it. Okay. And then the last thing that I don't know if we have a date yet, but we've been trying to firm up a date for the joint meeting with the select board to vote on the interim planning board seat that was vacated by Amy. And John, do we have any update on that?
So we're hoping on August 18th is going to be the joint hearing. But we just need to confirm it with the select board.
September, you mean August or September?
August.
August 18th.
So that would be next week. But we need to firm that up with the select board and make sure that can work. As far as I know, it can work, but I believe that what's going to be happening.
Sorry, Mary, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do we have any applicants?
We do.
Okay, good.
Really quickly, just do a straw poll here. How does August 18th work for this group? For me, it's fine. Jane?
Jane, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Yes, I'm available.
And Dave?
Yes, I'm fine.
Rob?
Yep, can make it work.
And Mary?
Yes. Would it be
Okay.
at 7?
I'm hoping it would be earlier. I have a design review board at 7.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So at least we know that works for us. So hopefully, John, we'll hear back from the select board coordinators shortly.
Mr. Chair, I just got a message from Amy. Amy, you're unmuted at this point. She said she's already been appointed by the select board as the liaison to the growth study committee.
Ah, great. Hi, Amy.
Hi. Okay. Just wanted to add that. So that may be all the info you need.
Okay.
You missed us so much you came back.
We miss you, Amy.
Well, I wanted to make sure I got on design review.
Okay, so John, does Amy still need to resign from her planning board appointment then?
That's going to be a question for town clerk, how they want to process all of that.
Okay.
If
So
they need
Amy,
her to
I guess
resign,
I just say, stay tuned, and John, if you want to just confirm with Connor,
sure.
and we can sort out the best way to move forward. Okay, well, thanks everyone for your efficiency there. As I mentioned, the next item on our agenda that we'll talk through is the master plan implementation action items. And again, this is something that that Muriel had brought up that she wanted to discuss in a little bit more detail at our last meeting, and we were short on time. So we did carve out some specific time on the agenda. I do want to, just given that we've got some other agenda items, I do want to keep this reasonably brief and hopefully kind of tee things up and let people process and digest and think a little bit more about this for some future meetings. But I think all of us, have some convictions on the master plan and how important it is as a guiding document for our board. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Muriel, and you can walk us through your thoughts and some discussion and some talk about how we move forward with regards to our master plan implementation and action items.
Great, thank you, Gary. I'm going to share my screen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to have permission. So, do you see my master plan work outline?
Yes.
Starting with land use. So there is nothing particularly sophisticated about this, except that I compiled all of the the implementation plan action items in one document, and I included a status column over here so that as we work through these, we can keep an updated status on one document that I envision the planning office staff to maintain so that we always have it. In the status section, I do not have a very sophisticated system. I did put down some of my thoughts on each one. The yellow designation here is generally one that we just have to look at, agree to a way forward, and put that into action. The green, I think, are areas that we are currently doing or are the status is ongoing and happening, and we don't really have action. The orange are sections that I think are potentially overdue and potentially need more assertive action. But all of these statuses are just my thoughts when I went through to create this document. So none of them represent a status per the planning board yet. So what I want to say first for everybody is these goals are abbreviated. If you want the full goal, you're going to have to refer to the master plan. I have a hard copy here so that as we go through them, we can talk about the full goal. So as an example, land use action item number 1, evaluate land for preservation and acquisition, is actually evaluate land to find areas that might be especially suited to preservation and work toward preservation and or acquisition as needed. So I think it's important to note that this isn't necessarily the planning board's goal. This is the Open Space Preservation Committee's goal. And when the master plans are put together, there's a gathering of all boards and committees and typically citizens at large as well. So the Open Space Committee may very well be keeping a very current status on this, and I presume that they are. But I think that we need to talk about potentially getting just an annual update on an action item or goal such as this. So we need to, talk about a process, whether we send, we send the open space committee an email each year and ask for an update on the goals that pertain to them, that kind of thing. So-
Through the chair,
Yep.
Yes, go ahead, Jane.
liaison for open space. And I
Yes.
can tell you that open space is on top of this. They actually have a detailed list of properties that they are, if not they're looking at, that they're potentially on the list to be looked at. It's also on our agenda for our next meeting to find out what we would like to send forward to the planning board to keep them up to date or not. You have to realize that these are potentially sensitive areas, because when people find that their properties may be of interest to the town, then things kind of tend to go sideways. So it's a sensitive areas, and the open space is talking about that currently.
So, Mr. Chair, I would propose that action item goes to green, and we just make sure we check in with whoever is our liaison each year. But I don't expect it would be anything but green. I think that they do actively work on that.
Yes, we do.
So just a quick question for you, Muriel. As I kind of look through this list, I just did a quick count and I see 86 action items.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of how we address or update these, because to be candid, to go through 86 of them in a public meeting is gonna take quite a bit of time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of how we manage this moving forward. And I'm not sure if there's, either, I mean, we've got different owners. So, and I think, I'm just wondering if we have liaisons. I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to think if there's a way to kind of efficiently update this and then hopefully prioritize either the ones that we think are most important or most needed from the planning board.
Yeah,
and
I
keep
agree.
those as our focus.
And the challenge is I don't think it's up to one person. I think that the first time through, we have to agree to a process, and it doesn't have to take a long time. And I think, for example, hearing Jane's update, I think that that's an action item we don't have to revisit particularly unless there's a concern.
Mhm.
But it is for the planning board to decide how to do that.
Okay. So then
So for example, the next one has a fixed due date of 2019. I think that, this one time we should get a status update from the select board for the purposes of the master plan update and ask them where we are on the Pratt, Irvine, and Tadaro properties, unless some member of the planning board knows that's possible. We might have somebody who knows that.
So Muriel, just going back to process, are you proposing that, and again, I'm sorry to kind of get hung up on this, but I think in some cases I'm wondering if we're better off sort of chunking these out and allowing people to go, especially for those that we have a liaison like open space. I guess I'm just wondering if we're better off chunking these out and then coming back with an update, or if we just want to kind of quickly go through the list and, any update, yes, no, next steps.
I personally think we can drive through them pretty quickly.
Okay.
But I am open to suggestions on process. My only concern with this was that because there are so many action items, firstly, I would like to congratulate the last master plan committee, because this is the first time I think that we've really had an implementation plan. So they've taken a real solid shot at an implementation plan. But I think necessarily we need to revisit the ongoing action items at least once all the way through and find out if they are ongoing or they need action, and some of them, hopefully many of them, will be complete.
Any
But-
other thoughts from the board on process? And I'm okay with that. And you know, we can even probably, you know, commit a certain amount of time each of our meetings to working through the list. I don't know how long it'll take, but you know, we can certainly designate some time and we get as far as we get. Jane?
Okay, so my thought is that we have a lot of representatives throughout this, ZAC and planning board, open space and maybe even select board. I would put it out to the individual liaison members maybe and ask them to be prepared to do a short follow-up to update the planning board, and then maybe leave the rest, you know, kind of open. That might consolidate it a little bit.
Thoughts?
So Muriel, can I ask a question through the chair?
Yeah, please go ahead, Dave.
So Muriel, just a couple quick questions. One is, I assume this is in an Excel document where each of the owners can filter on their own?
Well, they can do that on this document. It's a Word document.
Okay, yep, okay, sure.
Yep.
And then just a follow-up question, not follow-up, a separate question. When you went through all of these action items, were any of them related to updating the master plan, or are they all takeaways from the master plan?
So this is all implementation items included in the master plan. The master plan is typically updated every 10 years, and it was last done in 2017.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so we've got kind of two recommendations here. One of them is to just start working through them with an update as much as we know now. And in some cases, that action item might be just to follow up. Option two would be to, I think to Jane's point, is to assign them to a liaison. I think the only challenge there is that we don't necessarily have a liaison for all of these other boards.
Correct, and we would have to chew off at one bite at a time. But I think you got the Historic Commission, you got Concom. Do we have a Concom liaison member? I know we got Zach. Who else do we have? If we can identify the liaison people that we have,
We don't
currently.
have a Concom.
We should probably have a Concom.
That's my only concern. I mean, I'm just thinking of, we don't have a formal liaison with the select board.
They do have a liaison to us, as does the school committee.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I
That's
was
true.
too.
But it's harder to drive that way. We
Yeah.
have to reach out to them.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm inclined actually, to me, I think that I'm not sure how much that's going to save us. I think it might work, Jane, like with open space, because I think you're very involved in that board. So
There's trails ones, and we have somebody, Dave is on that committee. I think that
Right.
works really well.
Trails.
Yes. Congratulations, by the way, on the big grant, Jane. Sorry,
Thank
off topic.
Yeah, no, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, so we could certainly, parcel out in the historic district.
Yeah,
I don't think any are design review. Do we have somebody who's a historic district rep?
isn't it Amy?
Well, Amy's not on our board anymore.
No. I mean, I would be happy to volunteer for DPW if that's something that I think we need to consider.
so
I'm not sure. Maybe historic will get someone on their end to connect with us.
So I'm just thinking that given there are a lot of these that don't quite fit, maybe I think we are better off just going through them. And my only ask is that we're very specific in who's going to take that follow-up action, whatever it might be. So in the cases where we have a designee, then that would fall into that person. In cases where we don't, then we'd be looking for someone else to take that action item on the follow-up. And again, I think it probably makes sense to kind of lump them together. So, somebody would take all of the select board action items and follow up with the select board in a group.
I think it's very accurate, Gary, that we get the facts from these individual committees and boards and bring it back to the planning board so that we have actual data to work with.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe what we do tonight is we just we assign a correspondence or somebody to oversee correspondence with each of the different owners.
Okay.
And that way, to your point, Jane, we're not sort of just hypothesizing, or if we don't know, and that way we're not sort of speculating on the status of things. In cases where somebody has information, then certainly we can identify that, or we can change the status. But
Right.
I think to your point, most of these are going to require some level of follow-up, and so it probably makes sense to have one person coordinate all of the follow-up for a respective board.
Right.
So,
So maybe going through the chair, maybe we could just identify the various different boards and committees that
Yep.
need to have, someone reach out to them.
we can do them in order, and then as we get to them, a new person might take an open one.
Yep. No, I think that's a great idea.
I'm happy to reach out to the select board through Amy on any of that are the select board. Just because that's the next one.
Okay.
What, this is Rob. Can I jump in with a question of, like, there's approximately 40 or so that are select board and maybe another 40 or so that are planning board, roughly, maybe 35 each. But if we propose 35 questions, basically is what it's going to amount to the select board, is like, what's our expectation for time frame to get really responses? Like, I'm looking at some for the select board. CFS 23, develop policies and programs for sustainable and energy efficiency. Like,
I think the ask, Rob, through you, Mr. Chair, is
Please go
for
ahead.
the select board rep that works with us to work with us to come up with an expectation and a plan. So I'm not going to send a list of items and ask for a status necessarily, but I might list out the action items that the master plan includes for the select board, and then ask Amy, as an example, if we can have a conversation and see how she wants to approach that set of tasks with her board, and then bring that back.
Sounds like a good idea.
And Rob, I hear you, because 87 is a lot, and there's hang on. At the same time, I think that this is an output from the master plan, and that falls into our jurisdiction, and we haven't talked about it in a while. But I think to Muriel's point, if we these have all been deemed important in some capacity, and I think that we owe it to ourselves and to our other boards and to our community to at least update and identify which ones are of top priority, and then we can start working towards those.
And two thoughts on that, if I could.
Hang on,
Mr.
go ahead, Muriel.
Chair. Is there are some that naturally group themselves together, so it's not a criticism, but as we go through them, I have suggested some areas where we do that, and potentially for a future planning board, some feedback on the master plan to try and take this great idea and make it a little bit more concise and more clearly actionable. Because part of the difficulty, obviously, is that we have no authority over any of the work, over any of the boards that aren't ours. So we're just outreaching for updates, essentially reminding people of the master plan, which is a document that we own, sort of, and then finding out how it is best that we either keep updated, or perhaps we find out that this is not a particularly, like this, for example, the open space, evaluate land for preservation and acquisition. That is probably deep within their charge, and it probably doesn't need to be an action item on the master plan. but I just, I'm just saying that I don't know that for a fact. But we might, as we go through this particular implementation plan, also just formulate some feedback for future master plan committees when they're doing their implementation plan. But I celebrate the action items. I really do, because it's so hard for the master plan to be an actionable document without this first attempt at tasks.
All right, Rob, you had some further comments?
Yeah, through the chair, I kind of think about it in two separate veins. There's an owner, anything that's an owner of the planning board. I don't think there's going to be meaningful progress without having at least a brief discussion about any of the items. Like we talk about it in our meetings, and we can set some limit, like 10 a meeting, and we just go through the ones that are owned by us. And some of the discussion could be brief, some discussion could be a lot longer. And then the other ones, like that we're looking for input, like there's one that is just a super kind of topic of the town, like CFS 22, monitor and plan for increased school enrollment, the school committee. And like that by itself could take lots of discussion with the school committee. How can the planning board, what can we do in the master plan to help? What are they doing? Like that's just a meaty topic.
So Rob, I totally agree. I think the objective here in most situations is more about a status update and more about making sure that there is some continued progress. Because to your point, expanded school populations, I mean, that's a portion of the growth study committee and what they're doing. So there is action and updates. It's granted it's been stalled out a little bit with COVID. But I don't think we're necessarily going to, as a board, get into the weeds and solve that. But yet we have, as a board, taken action to make sure that we are addressing that action item appropriately. That's kind of my read on it. So I don't think that even all the ones that are on the planning board here, these aren't going to, turn into we're not going to solve for all of these on this board. But we do want to make sure that, in particular for those that we deem most important, that we are moving forward. And that's where I go back to, I think it's appropriate to at least get a status update on which each of them are. And then to me, the next step there is to go through all the planning board items and identify a subset of those that we think are worth flagging and prioritizing. And then we focus on those. Just to your point, I mean, we're not gonna make a lot of progress on. We're not gonna get through all 35 of these and close them out and move on. Sorry, Dave, did you have a thought?
Yeah, no, sorry. Just I wanted to add on to that a little bit and kind of run with it. To me, it would be nice to have a status on these, not necessarily every year, but like some of these ongoing ones, we can put in a bullet point. In 2007, we did this, just really high level. In 2011, we did this to support this action item. And I think that's good to show instead of just the current status. But holding that thought for a minute, I do have a question about the format, because in the master plan, this is kind of like in an Excel format in the back of the appendix, but it's also incorporated into the body of the master plan. So I'm a little concerned having it in two places and how to come up with the best format. I don't really have any good suggestions, but I think kind of documenting some high level, I don't think we should get into too much detail, but some high level stuff. Like even the one with the Main Street Corridor project, LU7, we could just list some bullet items. We did this, we did this, we did this. I mean, some of them may even disappear, but it might be nice to capture that history. Just a thought.
If we have it, definitely makes sense. I don't know if it could take a lot of digging to get that full history. I'm not really sure. but I just don't want to set a requirement for it because I don't want to go on I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time chasing something down that would be useful information, but it's going to take a lot of effort to get. So I think that makes sense. If we have information or we have things that have been done previously, that's certainly, and to Muriel's point, for future master plan committees, I think would certainly make this really useful. I just wouldn't make it a requirement.
Okay.
So let's do this. Let's just go through these and group them, and I do think the first step is just to update status on them. And I've already heard, so Jane will be able to provide or investigate and find an update on the OSPC items. Muriel, thank you for volunteering to take the select board items. Planning board, and I realize there's a lot of planning board ones here. I'm going to ask if there's someone that's willing to work with John to go through and get a one-line update on each of these planning board action items.
I also, this is Mary. I also just wanted to say that there's a number of these that either have been discussed by Zach or certainly could be referred to Zach for further investigation. So, and I've just been going through the list myself, just kind of noting those possibilities.
I think you would be the perfect one to take on the planning board and Zach, Mary, because you seem to have a lot of knowledge in that area.
Yeah, so
As
just to continue
liaison.
Mary's thought, for the third item, this one would be PB / Zach, so that Mary could sort of take over it and would sort of have a sense of a combination of knowledge from John and what Zach is planning on doing over the next year or so, and and for that matter, what's been done. So, I know there's been great progress there. So, it would be great to have those items outlined. Progress taken. Those are always good.
Mary, would you be willing to do that?
So can I ask a question first?
Go ahead.
Sure, Muriel.
So I believe that those two action items are in the green. They don't need any action, right? They're ongoing for purposes of the master plan review.
If you're referring to LU4 and LU5?
Yes. So
my understanding from this discussion thus far, when I was saying that we should refer some things to Zach, I was referring to the entire list that we can say, okay, some of the things under planning board should be referred to Zach for continuing work.
I got you.
There's also been additional discussion just in the last few minutes about whether or not I would take on the status updates on various things marked planning board. And I would be happy to do so. And I can also go through and suggest for our future discussion which ones could be referred to Zach if they have ongoing action to be taken.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. I know that's a big ask, and I appreciate your willingness to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. That's great.
That makes sense. DPW, and I think Jane, you already offered to take that one.
I can do that. And obviously Charles Trail. I think Dave has got the trails. He's the liaison for that.
You okay with that, Dave?
Yep. Yes, I am. Thanks.
All right. Then we've got the Historic Commission. I'll take the Historic Commission.
There you go, Gary. Like it.
Don't know a lot about the Historic Commission, but
Gonna find out.
I'm gonna find out. Concom, there's a couple in here for Concom.
Yeah, there is.
I can take Concom and probably Parks and Rec. There's a few for Parks and Rec and a few for Concom.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
The
We've
Hopkins
got
and
historical commission,
District.
and we've got the historic district commission. I'll take both of the
Okay.
historical related ones. As I quickly scroll through here,
There's land use.
I was going to assume land use would probably fall with planning board.
I
Okay.
agree.
Downtown parking, where would that go?
I don't know what that means. I didn't know
I
we
think
have a
that would fall
downtown
under
parking owner.
select board, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It probably has a designation. That's probably a typo on my part.
I think select board where they have control over all the property.
And
But council on eight,
yeah, that is definitely select board. That's me just typing wildly.
Okay. All right.
so we
So
got
just to,
council on aging and school committee still left.
Deb,
Yeah.
any both of those are pretty light ones. Any interest in school committee follow-up or council on aging?
I'll follow up on Council on Aging.
Okay,
Big school committee, it's just one.
thanks, Muriel. Okay, so we've got Muriel is taking the select board and the school committee. Jane is, excuse me, Mary is taking the planning board, Zach, and land use. Jane is taking open space, DPW.
Okay.
Am I missing anything?
No, I think that's it.
I think
Jane,
that's it.
there's one that incorporates the Board of Health and DPW.
Oh, okay.
I've got historic commission and the Hopkinton historic, excuse me, the historic commission and the historic district commission. Rob has Parks and Rec and Concom. Is that right, Rob?
Yep.
And then Dave has Trails.
I'm looking for trails on here. I will note it though. I'm sorry as I.
And then Deb is going to take Council on Aging.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. So does that make sense, Muriel? Are you comfortable with this? I mean, I know that it's going to take a little bit of time,
100%.
but
No, I think that I think that it makes sense to do it as efficiently as possible. I appreciate the approach, and Mary gets extra points for being willing to walk through those planning board items. I think that as elected planning board members, we should all walk through them. They won't all be Zach items. So I think all of us should review the planning board items as well. It doesn't have to be an exhaustive review, but we should have a strategy for them or a known status.
I think that's fair. And I'm going to propose, I think we've got, well, just from a timing perspective, is it reasonable to at least have the status updates for the September 14th meeting? And I feel like that's a month away.
I'm gonna be away for a week and a half of that and moving my child to college
Okay.
in Wisconsin. So that's a little bit of a stretch for me.
Okay. So let's plan on the September 28th meeting.
Also, if we have town meeting, Gary.
Yep.
Is that the 21st?
That's the 21st.
Oh,
Yeah.
So again, just at least we can pencil that in on a tentative basis. And I should have asked earlier, but John, does this all make sense to you? I mean, are we looking at this the right way? Or do you have any other comments on process-wise how we can kind of start to push this forward?
No, I think just taking the first step is gonna, things are gonna shake out how they shake out, and you're gonna figure out a better process if there is one as you go through it. But I think just, starting and getting underway is gonna be the best thing right now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pencil in for September 28th. And I think we've all got a few things to follow up on. At that point, we can, to me, I think it's worth, we can provide this document. I don't think we necessarily need to go through and discuss all of them, but I do like the idea in particular of the planning board ones, which we really have ownership for. I do think that we should go through each of those. And again, I'm going to continue to push on prioritizing those that we think most urgently need some action or progress.
Can I make one final suggestion, which
course,
just
Brenda.
popped into my head?
Mhm.
For those statuses, maybe we should get them all to John and Stephanie, and they keep the master document. And then John can evaluate if any of them need further action from us, or if there's any questions we have to contemplate.
John, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. And just to throw this out there, Muriel, if you're not too offended, I may put your list in a shareable Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet. Just, it might be a little bit more manageable, but we can work on that.
It started in a Google spreadsheet. It's super simple. You can copy and paste it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not offended. If you want to
Okay.
work in Excel or Google.
And again, I just want to say thanks again to Muriel for bringing this up and taking the initiative to at least pull this together and make sure we're having a discussion, because I do think that this is something that is important to us as a board, and with a lot of distractions over the last 6 months or so,
Jerry, can I
I'm
speak?
glad that we're revisiting it.
Through the chair, Jerry?
Yes, Dave.
Can I just sneak in one last comment, last question? I think my guess is that this was originally mostly updated in 2007, because in 2017, I don't think we made any updates to the master plan document itself. Does anybody else have any memory of that? I think we reviewed what we're doing right now. We kind of reviewed the status of everything, but I don't think we actually updated the master plan document itself.
It says that there was a committee, Dave. I don't know.
It might be something we could just research a little bit to study. I guess it doesn't matter, but I mean, maybe we could, we want to build off that, right? If we didn't give it its due attention, maybe we can do it in 2027, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's fair. Okay. Thanks everyone for your willingness to help, and I'm glad that we are moving this forward. All right, so the next item we have on our agenda is the approval not required for Leonard Street. And really quickly, and I know we've had an ongoing hearing for Buckland Street and Leonard Street.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, John.
You had said at the beginning you wanted to do the zoning articles third.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I was so excited because I was thinking like, wow, we're moving right along here. We're making good progress. And then, I got a little ahead of myself. So thank you, John. I appreciate that. So sorry, Lou. We were close, but we've got one more administrative item to get through here. So I apologize.
Maybe we could just give him a master plan item. Give it to Lou.
Okay. So on that note, John, can you just walk us through really quickly where we're at with regards to zoning articles for town meeting?
Yeah, so all of these were approved. I don't believe any of them had changed language when they were voted to be recommended for town meeting. So the issue is the hearing took place and the recommendation took place 6 months, more than 6 months prior to town meeting, since town meeting was changed. So now you need to just have a new hearing closer to the town meeting. So the ones that were changed, the temporary signs, the solar overlay district, those are within the 6 months. Those were closed after March 9th. So those are not open again. It's just the ones on March 9th that were held. And then we need to review and revote.
Okay. So from a process perspective, and again, I'm hoping this will be relatively quick, given that there aren't any changes from what we as a board voted on previously. But we will open up very briefly for any discussion or commentary, and we'll also make sure to allow the public to weigh in, as this is a public hearing. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Does that make sense, everyone, from a process perspective?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if I can ask, is it possible to put them up on the screen? To share a screen, so as we're going through them, so the public is aware in case they don't have that in front of them as well?
Yeah, I agree with Deb through the chair. I mean, I'm looking at the 5 in the agenda. Are those the 5 we're going to talk about?
That's correct.
Okay.
John, are you able to share those?
Yeah, let me bring up the document.
Okay, so while he's pulling that up, the first would be, let's see, this would be Article 19, Non-Conforming Lots, Uses, and Structures, Section 210-128. I'll just quickly read through this while he's pulling it up. The proposed change is to allow for the zoning enforcement officer to provide a waiver from requiring a special permit in certain situations for non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. The criteria for this waiver is that the proposed alterations do not alter the footprint of the existing dwelling. The proposed alteration does not alter the overall height of the existing dwelling. And the proponent gets signatures of all current abutters within 300 feet of the subject property on the plan to be submitted to the building department showing the proposed alterations with dimensions. The example situations are if someone wanted to put a dormer on their house or would like to enclose an existing deck. So any points of discussion on this article?
Just very quickly to review the reasoning behind this. So this was suggested by the zoning enforcement officer as a possibility to make it more streamlined for certain people, not having to go before ZBA and the extra work and sometimes some fees associated with that. So that was the purpose.
Thanks, Mary. Any further discussion?
Yeah, quick
Are there any-
question. This is Dave. Jerry.
Yep.
Is this, I think this is where we recommend for approval. Is that true? And
That's correct.
if that's the right terminology. So I just wanted to ask the question. All 5 of these we recommended for approval, correct?
That's
We
correct. And
Thank you.
all 5 of them were unanimous.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And John, I know we talked about it, but are we, I'm guessing it's cleaner if we go through and vote on these individually?
Sure.
Okay. So then in that case, with no further discussion, I'm going to entertain a motion to recommend for approval Article 19, Non-Conforming Lots, Uses, and Structures, Section 210-128.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, sorry. So that was Rob on the motion and Deb for the second?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, no further discussion. We'll move to roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran,
Jane Marin, yes.
Deb Feinberg,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel Kramer. Oh, Muriel's muted.
Muriel Kramer, yes.
All right, Dave Paul,
Hey, Paul, yes.
Rob Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
and Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. The next article would be Article 26, Wireless Telecommunications Facilities. The proposed changes to the zoning bylaw are to address changes that have taken place at the federal level in order to bring the town's zoning bylaws on the subject into compliance. Federal laws have changed such that towns cannot require approval of certain installations of wireless telecommunications facilities.
Just a slight correction. That's Article 16, not 26.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Any discussion or comments?
I'll go upstairs.
None.
I think these should be pretty straightforward. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to recommend for approval Article 16, Wireless Telecommunications Facilities.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
Okay, discussion? All right, roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran,
Jane Marin, yes.
Deb Feinberg,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave,
Hey, Paul, yes.
Rob,
Rob Benson, yes.
and Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. Article 18, Supplemental Regulations, Section 210-126. The proposed change to the zoning bylaw is to allow for more situations where accessory dwelling units would be allowed. Currently, the regulations prohibit anyone that is not related to the homeowner through blood, marriage, or adoption from inhabiting the ADU. The proposed change is to address changing relationship dynamics in society and allow for persons with a personal relationship to the homeowner to reside in the ADU, such as a child's unmarried significant other, or a close family friend that is not related by blood, marriage, or adoption. The amendment also removes the criterion that an ADU resident is over 60 years of age. And Mary, I know we had a lot more discussion on this. Do you just want to give a quick recap as to the rationale on this proposed amendment?
Yes. In addition to the language that is used in the summary that you just read, this is consistent with the some of the master plan action items to make affordable housing more accessible within Hopkinton. So this is one small way of making some affordable housing possible. And we did discuss at length in ZAC and use language to make sure that stairways and things like that are very much hidden from street view. So it basically preserves the single family home character of neighborhoods and so on, while still making some of this housing more accessible to a wider range of people.
Thanks, Mary. Any discussion from the board on this? Okay, and is there any discussion from the, I should have asked previously on the previous ones, but is there any discussion from the public? I don't see anybody raising their hand, but it's a little harder to see in this view. Okay. All right, well then I will entertain a motion to recommend for approval Article 18, Supplementary Regulations, Section 210-126 for ADUs.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
Okay, thank you both. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane Moran?
Jane Moran, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
And Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay, so that moves forward. Next one would be Article 6A, Downtown Business District, Section 210-20.3 car washes. The purpose of this amendment is to remove car washes as a use allowed by special permit in the Downtown Business District. And Mary, I'll look to you again if you just want to provide a little bit more background or rationale.
Sure, 30 seconds. This was introduced previously as removing it in one place and adding it in another. And this discussion at town meeting clearly indicated that year that the removal in the Downtown Business District made sense to a majority of the people speaking. And so we would like to introduce this as its own standalone amendment. So without adding the car wash use in a different district.
Thanks, Mary. Any discussion from the board? Any discussion or questions from the public? Okay. So on that, I will entertain a motion to recommend for approval Article 6A, Downtown Business District, Section 210-20.3, car washes.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane? Oh, Jane's muted.
Thank you. Jane Moran, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
And Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay, so that moves forward. And then the last one here is Article 8A, Industrial B District, Section 37.9, Housekeeping. The purpose of this amendment is to correct the numbering within this section in order to match the formatting elsewhere in the zoning bylaw. And I'm hopeful that this one doesn't need any explanation, Mary.
No.
Again, I'll open it up. Is there any discussion from the planning board, or if you're in the public and you want to have comments on this, please raise your hand now. And if not, then I will entertain a motion to recommend for approval Article 8A, Industrial B District, Section 37.9, Housekeeping.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
All right, discussion? Nope. Roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
And Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. John, are we good there?
We are good.
We are good. Okay. So now we can move forward to the Leonard Street A&R. And it's probably worth just some quick background. And I don't know if this is better coming from you, John, but just to go through from a process perspective, given that we've got a Leonard Street A&R and we've also got a Leonard and Buckland Street application on the same agenda. You just want to, before we hand it over to Lou, do you just want to quickly cover off on process here and why the same parcel is effectively on the agenda in two different places?
Sure. So as you may remember, we discussed the Buckland Leonard Street project. This involves the same parcels, just access would be from Leonard Street instead of creating Buckland Street. Leonard Street is partially a public way in existence, and then the rest of it is what appears to be a private way. So if Mr. Petrozzi and his company decided to develop these parcels from Leonard Street, it would potentially require an A&R rather than a subdivision approval. And that is, so he's proposing this, he's gone before Concom with this plan. And if this were to move forward, he would effectively withdraw Buckland Leonard Street and move forward only with this project.
Okay, thanks, John. Mr. Petrozzi, nice to see you again.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody remotely.
So do you want to quickly walk us through what you're proposing with this A&R?
Sure. Since we last met, we've gone through a process of trying to accommodate some of the abutters and neighbors, and we came up with a proposal to abandon our thoughts of constructing Buckland Street and propose access for 3 lots from Leonard Street instead of constructing Buckland Street. And through the various process with the Conservation Commission, we've been able to get an approval from the Conservation Commission of the plan that shows the 3 lots only being built with access drives from Leonard Street. The last step in the process would be the A&R endorsement for to create the 3 lots, and at which time the portion of land that makes up the right-of-way of Buckland Street would be abandoned and incorporated into the lots, and ultimately we would withdraw our applications for the construction of Buckland Street and the stormwater management permit related to that, because the Conservation Commission has reviewed it and stormwater would not be needed any longer. So the criteria for Leonard Street being a A&R endorsement is whether the way was in existence at the time the subdivision control law came into effect in Hopkinton, and whether or not it has suitable widths and grades to allow for the additional 3 lots that are being proposed. That's really kind of where it stands. We're expecting orders of conditions from the Conservation Commission in the next week or so. They just approved the plans last Tuesday. And the last step in the process is the A&R endorsement for the 3 lots.
Okay. Thanks, Lou. Couple of questions from me. One, you want to just give us some perspective on the at least what was discussed in terms of order of conditions from Concom?
Sure. This has been a very lengthy process, as you can remember. Part of the thought process was to not have as many lots being developed on the property. Originally, as we proposed 5 lots with a road being constructed on Buckland Street. And through a series of negotiations and conversations, we came to an understanding that we would accept 3 lots instead of the 5, and then it was reduced to 4, but then we arrived at a compromise of 3 lots, which I think the Conservation Commission was happy with, and we were agreeable to as well. That was step number 1. Step number 2 was there's some litigation that's ongoing that relates to a drainage that's been discharging onto the property for a lot of years that created a wetland situation and also caused a great deal of stormwater problems for adjacent properties down to the northerly side of the property. And under this proposal, we're doing extensive mitigation to create a better situation by holding the water back and eventually discharging it through, I don't know if you can notice the swale, the drainage easement that's located, shown on the plan. And that's going to help significantly from water just sheet flowing across the property into the neighbors to the north and to the west. So the way you see the drainage, there is a driveway that goes between that straddles lot 2A and lot 3A, and that's going to act as a sort of control structure for stormwater. And we think it's going to be a very significant improvement going forward. The Conservation Commission did have the plan and the proposal reviewed by Beta. So this proposal has received Beta's blessings. And although I'm not sure what the conditions are yet in the order of conditions, but one of the conditions is likely to be that we grant an easement to the town for the drainage coming off of Leonard Street onto the property. And also, we're creating a homeowners association that would be responsible for maintaining any of the drainage structures on the property. So the town would have very limited responsibility in the future. So, so that's pretty much it. I did submit a copy of the plans of that were under consideration by the Conservation Commission. I don't know if the board has had an opportunity to see those, but it's as part of this proposal, we'll be improving approximately 250 feet of Leonard Street with pavement and construction standards to bring it up to the normal standards of Hopkinton Planning Board regulations.
Can you just confirm, would that be the subdivision standards?
Yeah. In terms of construction, gravel, 4 inches of pavement, 20-foot width of pavement. There's no room for any sidewalks or widening the right-of-way or anything like that. But in terms of construction with the gravel, pavement width, and the amount of pavement that's going to be installed, that will all be to the same standard of your subdivision regulations.
Quick question
And-
through the chair.
And hang on one sec, Dave. And Mr. Petrosi, can you just clarify? So the Leonard Street is a combination of public and private.
Yes.
Can you just remind me, where does the public component of Leonard Street end, and where does the private component begin?
Well, it's kind of interesting. We provided a copy of the town meeting vote back in 1927. The best that we can, and the town has not provided any length of what Leonard Street, where the public portion ends, but the best that we can understand is that the public portion of Leonard Street ends roughly at the property line of where Wall Street's property begins, right there, yeah. So we didn't, and from there down, it's a gravel roadway, variable width. There is one house that's been built further down the road, maybe 500 or 600 feet further down. And there is one other house that's directly across the street at 7 Leonard Street that is directly across the street from these 3 lots that we're proposing. So that's the short answer is we think it's there in that at that particular location, and that's the best we can do at this point.
Okay. And Dave, hang on one second. I'm going to come back to you, but I just realized that I think just as a reminder for all of us and also for the public that is attending, I'm wondering, John, if you can just quickly talk through what's in scope for an A&R and what's not in scope, because I think it's important. This isn't treated like a subdivision proposal. There are some time constraints. So I'm wondering if you can just speak to that really quickly.
Yep. So A&Rs are really kind of a very simple but difficult thing to adjudicate. So A&Rs, to be determined as not a subdivision, need to have access on some type of way, and there's 3 different options for that, and that they have the appropriate lot size per zoning. There's to go in a little bit deeper, the 3 options for the access, and town council did a great job of laying these out, is it has to be on a public way, it has to be on a private way, and now I'm forgetting what they were.
So every lot within the tract
Right.
subdivided has frontage on either A, a public way, or a way which the clerk of the city or town certifies is maintained and used as a public way, or B, a way shown on a plan therefore approved and endorsed in accordance with the subdivision control law, or C, a way in existence when the subdivision control law became effect in the city or town in which the land lies, having, in the opinion of the planning board, sufficient width, suitable grades, and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the proposed use of the land abutting thereon or served thereby, and for the installation of municipal services to serve such land and the buildings erected, so on and so forth.
Yes, exactly. So those are really the decisions that the board has to make. Is this, does it access a public way? Does it access a piece of property or private way that's maintained as public or was part of a subdivision? Or is it an access way that provides sufficient access to the and ability for vehicular and utilities in a way that was in existence prior to the adoption of the subdivision approval? And then after that, if it has the required amount of frontage, or lot size, not frontage.
So then a couple of things. Number one, we can't condition an A&R, so it is what it is. We can't attach other things to it. And then again, from a timeline perspective, we have a relatively tight window, 21 days,
Yep.
of which to review and make a determination on it. So what that means for this as a board, since our next meeting is not until September 14th, we either need to make a determination on it tonight, or B, we would have to schedule a special meeting before our next scheduled meeting, specifically to make a determination on this project.
Or, Mr. Chair, the third option, Mr. Petrosi can withdraw and then resubmit prior to the next meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would be happy to extend the time for the board to endorse the plan until the next meeting in September 14th, if that's helpful. I wouldn't want to have to resubmit it. I think we've resubmitted this plan like 4 different times, so I'd rather just give the board additional time to review the plan and also take a look at the site development plan that the Conservation Commission approved, which, while the planning board may not be able to attach conditions to an A&R plan, the plan that was approved by the Conservation Commission certainly contains significant amount of details that we will be required to comply with as we represented to the commission for the improvements in Leonard Street and the adjacent parcels.
Okay. So, John, I know you followed up with town council just to see if this is something that could be continued at his request. And it's my understanding, unfortunately, Mr. Petrosi, that this can't be continued even at your request. So,
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may jump in.
Yeah, please do.
If he wanted to withdraw, just because it's a process thing, if you wanted to withdraw and resubmit, it would really essentially be resubmitting the Form A, because we would already have the Mylar, we'd already have all the other information, and the Form A is what gets stamped in. So it would be, I would venture a guess that the planning board would not require you to submit another fee or anything like that, but it would really just be getting the Form A time stamped.
Just the application, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I have no objection. I was just trying to make it a little bit easier.
I appreciate it, but let's keep moving forward and see where we end up tonight, and then we can talk about next steps.
Okay.
So, Dave, I know you've been patiently waiting. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, 2 quick questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I kind of remember the beginning of Leonard Street as being narrow and not the 20-foot width. So would there be 2 different widths on this street?
I'm not quite sure what I think recently the town did widen a little bit of Leonard Street and placed a Cape Cod berm along the edge, the northerly edge of Leonard Street. I don't have the answer to that. I just know that for our purposes, we thought 20 feet was what was needed, and that's what we proposed.
Okay, thanks. I can research that on my own. Second question is, I know A&R, there's no, what would you say, Gary? We can't create any.
We can't condition it.
Condition it, thank you. I know we can't create any conditions, but I'd like to know if the planning board would like to propose on a good faith if the applicant will be willing to work with the DPW and be able to turn over that section of the road as public to the town?
Well, sure. We would certainly that would be favorable to the people who are going to move to these lots to have a public way continue. It's always been our impression that the town didn't want any more responsibility than they already had.
I think we prefer to have the roads as long as it's built to the standard and we don't have to spend any money improving it.
Okay.
Because we maintain private roads anyway as far as plowing and such.
Yeah.
But to me, it would seem like any other subdivision where you just, as part of one of the town meetings, we vote to accept the road.
Yeah, well, I'd leave that up to the DPW. I mean, we've had many discussions about it, but one of them wasn't to accept it as a public way, but we certainly will have a conversation with Mr. Westerling and see what his thoughts are on it.
Great, thank you.
So, any other general? I do want to get to the correspondence and the letter from Hopkinton Town Council. But before we get to that, are there any other general questions or comments about this proposed A&R?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I think it would be beneficial for Mr. Petrosi to tell the board how he would gain permission to build the road on the private land.
Okay, Mr. Petrosi?
Well, under the statute, we have the private way we own to the middle of the way, and people on the opposite side of the street own to the middle of the way. And under the statute, I think it's chapter 185, anybody who abuts a private way has the right to improve the private way for the benefit of the people who live on the way. And that includes, construction, installing utilities and other amenities, necessities for access. So we're pretty sure that we have the rights to do what we're proposing to do. And I will say that, this has been I don't know if you recall, but, we had two abutters on the other side on Pleasant Street that abutted Buckland Street. And this is a culmination of some negotiations regarding the rights in Buckland Street. And as an accommodation, we felt that this was a better plan for those two abutters. They've granted us an easement for utilities to install water and sewer up the back of the property, formerly Buckland Street. So we won't really be installing any utilities in Leonard Street. All those utilities will be coming from the back of the property from Pleasant Street. But as far as the improvements, under the general laws, we have the rights to improve the private way.
Is that your perspective as well, John?
Yeah, I just wanted an explanation for the board, just because I'm feeling that question was going to come up anyway.
All right, thanks, Mr. Petrosi. So, Mr. Petrosi, have you reviewed the letter from Hopkinton Town Council on August 7th?
Yes, we reviewed it. I think basically what she's saying in the second paragraph, in the middle paragraph of page 3, it's up to the planning board to make the determination if the way was in existence at the time the subdivision control law became effective in the town of Hopkinton, and a determination as to whether the roadway has suitable widths and grades to provide the required access for the type of use that we're proposing. Right now, as I mentioned, there's already in front of the property, there's already an existing house that has access along the same gravel roadway. And there's a house 600 feet further down that also gains access to Leonard Street, the public portion of Leonard Street along the same gravel way. We will be improving that portion of Leonard Street to upgrade it so that it's paved and it has more access or better access than it presently does. But it does have access grades and so on for the traffic that we're proposing. So that's really, I think, the planning board's discretion to make that determination. And we would hope that based on the information that we've submitted, that provides suitable information for the board to make that determination.
Okay. So, to the planning board, has everyone had a chance to review the letter from town council?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and I think it's important, in town council's opinion, this proposal does not meet 2 of the 3 exceptions to the definition of subdivision provided by Mass General Law section C4181L, and likely does not meet the 3rd, So their recommendation, therefore, is subject to the planning board's determination regarding the third exception, is that the A&R endorsement is likely not warranted. We believe that the appropriate path forward is for Wall Street to submit a petition for roadway approval, as Wall Street previously did for Buckland Street when it was contemplating constructing a roadway on the north side of its parcel. So, I guess my question for you, Mr. Petrosi, is how is this project or proposal different? I realize that it's fewer lots, and there's certainly some trade-offs with regards to Buckland Street, but just from a process perspective, I'm wondering how it's different from the pathway that you took with Buckland Street, or for that matter, the pathway. I know you've talked a lot about Box Mill, how it would be different from the process that project took in order to build out those parcels.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as you might recall, when we did I don't know if you were present when we did our site walk for Buckland Street. Buckland Street, there was a serious question as to whether or not it existed on the ground at the time the subdivision control law came into effect. In fact, it was, overgrown and heavily shrubbery with trees and so on. We don't have that situation on Leonard Street. Leonard Street is a passable right-of-way that's been used for 100 years. It's maintained and plowed by the town, I believe. And we have existing homes that are on that roadway that use that for their access to their properties. So that's one big major difference between the Buckland Street proposal and this proposal. And while town council may have their opinion, they do leave it up to the planning board to make that determination based on the conditions on the ground. The town council hasn't seen the property and hasn't visited the property, and only knows from paperwork that we've submitted that they're rendering their opinion. Yeah. And we've been through a long process here. It's been over 3 years. We think we've come up with a solution that is beneficial to the neighbors, the town, and Wall Street. It's an amicable resolution. The plans that we've submitted previously for Buckland Street for the petition to construct, we have revised plans that we could give to the planning board that would substitute for those original filing on Buckland Street. It would just be a revised plan with a revision date. So there really isn't much to do other than make that determination.
Yeah. So hang on one second. So I just want to go back to one thing you said, and then I know Dave's got a question, but you mentioned that the road is maintained by the town, and at least from what I've gathered, it sounds like maybe only a portion of Leonard Street is maintained by the town. And I say that because I know that I had received an email correspondence late from one of the residents of Leonard Street stating that they contract out to plow it. They had to get an easement in order to connect the sewer across it. So how much of Leonard Street, is the portion that provides the frontage for you, is that maintained by the town?
Quite honestly, I don't know who plows the roadway, and whether or not when the town comes down to plow Leonard Street as the public portion, where they go from there. Do they go all the way down to the end, which is another 600 feet or so down, or do they just stop and plow the? So there's a lot of questions as to maintenance, but in terms of our frontage, we are essentially extending the paved portion approximately 225 feet from where it ends as the public way. So we're just talking about adding 225 feet of pavement, 20 feet wide, that would be constructed to the town standards to provide access to these 3 lots. And actually, in actuality, it's only 2 lots that we're asking for because we already have the right for 1 lot. So it's the 2 lots that are lot 2A and lot 3A. Those are the two lots that we're really looking for the endorsement on, because we already have one lot there.
Okay. And so I just want to confirm, and I apologize, Dave, I appreciate you waiting patiently, but of the three options in which this subdivision would meet the requirements for subdivision, are you proposing that the pathway for you is A, which is a public way or a way which the clerk of the city or town certifies is maintained and used as a public way? B, that the way shown on plan theretofore approved and endorsed in accordance with the subdivision control law, or C, a way in existence within the subdivision control law became effective in the city or town in which the land lies, so on and so forth.
We're on C. C is the provision that we seek the endorsement of the plan under.
Okay. So from a process perspective, and John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from a process perspective, the determination for us to make is one, is there a way in existence? And then two, is it, let me just find the right language here. In its current condition has sufficient width, suitable grades, and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the proposed use of the land abutting thereon or served thereby, and for the installation of municipal services to serve such land in the building erected or to be erected thereon.
Right.
So like, those are the two things I think for us to determine through this process. All right, Dave. You
Yeah,
have a question?
thanks, Gary. Just quickly, I want to make a comment that I agree with the applicant, and I think if I might go out on a limb, that I believe most of the planning board would be that this is a much better option than the original option, because to put a narrow road between those two houses would be a big burden. So I just want to make that point. That's just an opinion. But my real question, I think, Gary, maybe I'm rephrasing your question. I'm not sure. But I guess I would ask the applicant why they wouldn't apply for a subdivision instead of a A&R.
Mr. Petrosi, do you want to answer that question?
Well, an A&R is a very simple process, doesn't require a public hearing, and as John has mentioned, it has a quicker timeline for approval or endorsement. As I said earlier, I mean, we do have the current hearing process still pending for the Buckland Street matter, and this would be a continuation of that process, but only with a revised plan that has now reverted to Leonard Street. So if the planning board in the next, process on September 14th, we would open that meeting up and simply discuss this proposal under the previous petition to construct a private way, then we could satisfy both objectives if that were amenable to the.
Thank you. Just a follow up, and I'll be done, Gary. Just a comment that to the rest of the planning board, that if we go with an A&R, then we don't have any control over what he puts there or how he does it, or it's basically, I guess he would follow the zonings, right, Mr. Chair? So he'd have to follow that. But if it was a subdivision, then we'd have more say in enforcing our regulations.
Yes. Mary, Muriel, I know you're waiting. Mary
No, I'm all
raised
set.
her hand digitally. Okay. And I apologize, Mary. I don't see the hands raised in this view.
Oh,
So I apologize for the delay, but go ahead.
So my understanding as well from this discussion and from the town council's letter is that we cannot take into account the fact that you are planning to upgrade the gravel portion of the road, and we have to make the A&R determination based on the condition it is in right now, and that does not mean that we wouldn't agree with some improvements to the road and certainly go forward with you in that design change. I agree with Dave in the opinion that this is a better option. I simply don't see how we can move forward with an ANR and call this an ANR because of the current condition of the road. I'm most concerned about access for emergency vehicles, and you are right that there's currently a house or possibly two houses that are on the gravel portion of the road. And I would say, hazard a guess that the fire chief would say that he, is not in favor of having situations like that. So having, improvements to the road in front of those houses that exist right now will be a major improvement for the safety of the town and the safety of these residents, as well as for the proposed houses in your development. But we do have to look at it from the standpoint of condition it is in now.
Thanks, Mary. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I also struggle with that. Jane, were you raising your hand?
No.
No. Okay. So again, just getting back from a process perspective, I think two decisions for us to make. Do we agree that there is a way in existence? And so let's sort of compartmentalize this and talk about that one first. And if we are in agreement there, then we can assess the current condition of Leonard Street. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? And just nod your heads yes or no. Okay. So, I think these types of situations, I'm personally inclined to follow the guidance of town council, but they're in their letter, they comment that they do believe that the applicant has made a sufficient claim that a way in existence exists. And I remember going through this discussion with Buckland, and I remember my reservations about it. But in this case, to Mr. Petrosi's point, it seems like pretty clearly for a long period of time, there has been some type of access point that would provide the way in existence that they're claiming. That's my take, and I'll really quickly just open it up to the board to see if people have thoughts on that, if they have thoughts otherwise, or if they're in agreement with my perspective on it.
Gary, just a quick clarification. Is that the opposite of what the town council is saying?
No,
What are you suggesting?
that's an agreement with town council.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in agreement.
Say again, Muriel?
I'm in agreement with town council with Gary's perspective. It's a way in existence.
I agree that it's a way in existence.
So I guess I'm a little confused. If it's a way in existence, then why is it not an A&R?
Because in addition to it being a way in existence, it also, in its current condition, needs to have sufficient width, suitable grades, and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicle traffic in relation to the proposed use of the land.
Okay, thank you.
So two-part process.
Thank you for the clarification.
Through the chair, it's also unclear. It seems the way is a private way where the street frontage is, and it just is. It's not a public way that provides street frontage.
Yes, but that's where the way in existence comes into play, because there has been, and John, correct me if I misspeak here, but because it has been accessed as a way in existence prior to subdivision control law, then that entitles the property owner to use it for access to their parcels.
If I can add, I think that it is compared to Buckland Street and Leonard Street, and you've said this already, Gary, that there is a distinct difference between the development of that street, which was at the very root of, at the very beginning of that street. So technically, whether it was a way or not was much more questionable. Where Leonard Street, at least, how many feet is it, Lou? 60 feet?
it's an extra 250 feet of pavement that we're building.
No, what is it before the 250 feet?
Oh, roughly about 527 feet.
Oh, it exists as 527 feet.
Yes.
So,
Is either pavement or gravel drive.
oh, okay.
No,
so-
that's
so-
the paved
Oh.
portion of the public way.
Thank you. I apologize.
Okay, so it's quite different and much more established. So,
But just to build on that, Deb, even the portion that's not paved is still a gravel drive, and that gravel portion is what provides Mr. Petrosi with the front. That's what provides him with the frontage that he needs to move forward with this proposal.
right. And it's
I would
not-
agree with Muriel and Gary that this is a way in existence. The first part of the question.
Does anybody not agree that this would qualify as a way in existence? Okay. And then the second part of that, again, is whether or not in its current condition has sufficient width, suitable grades, and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicle traffic in relation to the proposed use of the land. And, and again, I'll just jump out there with my perspective here, Mr. Petrosi, and I appreciate your willingness to improve the road. What makes me a little nervous is that because we can't condition an A&R, we don't have a whole lot of control or influence as to what happens here. And I went down the street. When I drove down it a few days ago, there were landscaping trucks. It was barely passable in my sedan. I struggle with the fact that it's, and I think that's why you're proposing the improvements is to make it sufficient. But I'm really uncomfortable with moving forward with this without having much means to enforce it. And so personally, I like the pathway that town council is recommending of submitting a petition for roadway approval. And once that's approved, then I think, my opinion, that this A&R becomes pretty straightforward at that point in time.
What, may I speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please do.
So so I think we're all on the same page here that the board seems to feel that it's a way in existence. So what we've done in the past on other situations similar to this is we enter into a covenant with the planning board that is associated with the A&R endorsement that is reflective of a plan that we bond similar to a subdivision, that we would enter into a tripartite agreement of some sort, and we would bond the improvements. And only when the improvements were completed, then we would be eligible to actually build on the lots. So that serves both sides. You feel the Conservation Commission has the plan that we've got to build to the standard that's on that plan. The planning board would likely like what was on that plan in terms of construction standards. So we could agree to provide a covenant or some sort of bonding mechanism to the planning board, similar to a subdivision approval for the construction of the improvements. And then once those improvements are completed, then we would we eligible for building permits on the 3 lots. And that would be a way to address the concerns of the board and still allow the process to go forward.
All right. So I'm not familiar with that process. John, are you familiar with that process? And I realize we have a question or a comment from the public as well, but I just want to carry forward with this thought before we get to the comment from Mr. Hildreth.
So I'm not very familiar with that. I know there's covenants and subdivision approvals and approvals like that. So I would definitely want to talk to town council about that and ensure that the town would be an appropriate path for the town.
Okay. Thanks, John. Mary.
Lou, I definitely understand your desire not to go through additional time meeting with us, although, you know, we all enjoy each other's company and all, but um, but I think that what you're proposing might really be just bypassing our standard processes that we could get through quite quickly because we understand your design and so on. But my personal opinion, and you know, I can't speak for the whole board, but is that this isn't appropriate for an A&R because the roadway is not improved. And if we just go through that process of doing the roadway approval and then through our normal process, you know, the steps that we take, it may take a little longer than, you know, 21 days, but it probably won't take much more than, you know, a couple more meetings. And I think that that's the appropriate way to handle this. I just
Okay.
don't think it's the
I was just offering it as a alternative. As I said, I have no problems with submitting the plans that we have as an amended revision to the previous application. And we would have the town planning board have time to review it between now and the next meeting. And hopefully the board would be agreeable to that which the Conservation Commission has also signed on to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Petrosi, I don't, what are you proposing? Can you just walk through that again?
Well, we have a pending hearing, open hearing on Buckland Street for construction of a way. It's actually a construction of a private way. So that way is now gone, and we're submitting revised plans that are like the successor to those plans to the planning board. So those plans would then become the plans of record that the board would vote on.
Okay, so you're proposing that you would update the plans on the Buckland Leonard Street proposal to include this current design?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that a subdivision or is that an A&R request?
Oh, that's it was considered a petition to construct a private way. Since there doesn't seem to be any disagreement that the way was in existence at the time, 1953, when the subdivision came in. So the only remaining factor now is to make sure that the way is constructed with suitable widths and grades to provide access. So that's what that plan is to do, is to show that we're going to do that. And the planning board could
just to paraphrase. So you would use that spot in the public hearing to construct, to improve the road on improve Leonard Street. And then once that goes through, then you would submit the A&R as defined.
Correct.
Here. So that's effectively conforming to at least what town council has recommended.
That would be what our intention would be.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may bring up some concerns with that, that proposal would be a different application entirely than what was submitted before. So let me try and phrase this differently. So the previous application was for Buckland Street, and if you changed the Buckland Street plans to be Leonard Street, that would be a substantial change from what was advertised and what was discussed at all the meetings. So it really would be a new application, unfortunately, because you can't make a substantial change on something that was advertised as a public hearing, because then the public who may have gotten a notice wouldn't necessarily know that the project had changed that much, unless they were paying attention to every year. So that's one concern. The second concern is, and I don't know if this is what Mr. Petrosi was alluding to, but having the A&R approval at the same meeting as the approval for a petition to construct a paper street, kind of going back to what Mary's point was, you need to do the A&R by what's on the ground. And I'm not saying Mr. Petrosi would do this, but if you get a petition to construct a paper street and an A&R at the same meeting, if you get the A&R, you don't necessarily have to construct the paper street because you've already got the A&R approval.
Right.
So you kind of need to have the road in place so that the A&R can be judged on what's on the ground.
I understand. It's a cart before the horse kind of thing, and I understand what you're saying, John. So with regard to since you're not having a meeting until September 14th, we do have time to re-advertise the meeting with the new plan and so on and so forth. We just needed an updated abutters list to do that. And so, but I would withhold the A&R plan until the planning board has acted on the construction plans. And then even if the planning board wanted to endorse the plans and hold them until the improvements were constructed, or I don't know whether or not you'd have a bonding requirement for those plans, but I'm sure those kinds of details can be worked out in terms of the process.
So the one thing I would add to that, Mr. Chair, is to get on the agenda for the 14th, you'd have to submit like this week. we have a timeline for when we have to actually submit to the newspapers and everything like that, and it's not us that makes it that long. It's the newspapers. It's all the other stuff. I'm not saying it can't be done. It just needs to get done like right now.
Like I can. All I have to do is just change the names. I mean, you tell me when you need it, I'll have it there.
Okay, so we've had someone from the public that's been waiting patiently, and I think we're going to come back to this, but I do want to, if you want to unmute Mr. Hildreth. Mr. Hildreth, if you just want to provide your name and your address and a question or comment that you might have.
I'm Michael Hildreth, 19 Leonard Street. So I'm at the far end of Leonard Street. And, when I purchased the property from our in-laws, and what our property map shows is that section that's being called a private way is actually my land, and it's my driveway. It used to be my father-in-law's driveway up until the point they deeded us the land, which I believe was in 2003. So this has been private property the entire time. Now there is a right-of-way and easement that was put on my land. I had researched that Tom Terry has to get to his land down at the end. But through our attorney's review, that was the only easement that was ever written into the deeds as the property changed hands over time. So, my feeling is that I don't know how someone can make improvements on a piece of property I've been paying taxes on for 17 years. And I can show you the improvement bills from, Diana's to Scott's Landscaping to keep the road maintained throughout that time. So, yeah, it just seems unfair to me that someone can just come in and claim that it's an access point and I'm going to start doing all this work on your property and you have nothing to say about it.
Yeah. Thank you. I understand your frustration. And I think, we went through this in a lot of detail with regards to the way in existence discussion on Buckland Street, which, had some similarities and that the way in existence crossed over private property. There wasn't an existing easement. But from, my understanding of it, as well as the input and recommendation from town council, at least in my opinion, it sounds like with the board, that way in existence does exist, and it does provide them some access. And again, I say that only because the driveway existed, the access point existed before subdivision bylaws even came into effect. And John, I don't know if you have a better explanation than that, but that having been through this previously, that's my best explanation that I can provide as to why they're asserting this right to improve it.
So I don't know the whole story about all of it, but in town, I'll give you kind of another example. In town, there are a lot of private streets, especially near the Lake District. They were laid out on subdivision plans in the early 1900s. They are private property. They're owned by private individuals, but they are shown as plans. And there's statutes in Massachusetts that allows for property owners that have property that may only have the access through those private ways. They have a right to access the public network through these established ways. Even though they are owned by somebody else, even though they are private land, they are established ways. And way is a legal term. It's not that it necessarily has to be paved. It doesn't have to be improved. It's something that was shown on a plan as a route to get to these parcels. And so while you may own the land, Mr. Hildreth, there is an argument to be made that the way was laid out as a way to access other properties in the past, and therefore those properties may have a right to access the public network. Otherwise, their land would essentially be landlocked, because their lots may have been laid out along with the assumption that that way was the access that they would get. So obviously, there's going to have to be a little bit more investigation by you, by Mr. Petrosi, maybe by the town, to make sure that that's all above board. But it's not uncommon for that type of thing to happen.
I'll look further into that.
Appreciate your comments, and I you know, I don't think this is an easy one, and I know that we as a board have struggled with it, but
Yeah, especially since, the town doesn't provide any services whatsoever. In fact, I've got to bring my trash all the way up to have it be picked up. So it's unfortunate, but
yeah.
We'll look
Okay.
further into it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hildreth.
Through the chair,
Yes, Dave.
if this does go through all its steps and it does get approved by the town, he would get some benefits that he wouldn't have to bring his trash all the way up. It would be plowed by the town and maintained by the town.
If
A little
it-
bit of a silver lining.
Okay. So just getting back to kind of process forward, and again, my preference would be to follow the process that town council has outlined, that you resubmit for a petition for roadway approval. It sounds like from what Mr. Gelsich is saying is that could be done if you were to submit it quickly. Mr. Petrosi, it sounds like you have some ability to submit that quickly. But to me, that's consistent with how we want to manage these types of things. That's consistent with, just as an example, I know you've often referred to Box Mill. I think that's consistent with how Box Mill moved forward. And to me, I just think that's the cleanest process. So that, again, that's just my personal opinion, but I do want to just kind of solicit input from the board and see where everyone else's thoughts are on this.
I'll just jump in early that I agree with you, and I think the applicant is willing to do that. And I would want some kind of dependency on the road being built before we saw the A&R.
I agree, and I also think it might be helpful because more of the newer members will be able to vote on this rather than it being a very, very small number.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Although with regard to the A&R, all of us that are here tonight would be eligible to vote on it because the A&R is actually a separate proposal.
Right,
from
I was referring more to the next steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Through the chair, my feelings on this is I think it's unclear to me that all the explanations being away. This seems very much like it's his driveway, not a public way, and there would need to be some legal clarification before any determination could be made, in my opinion, because it seems very much like it's his driveway to me.
So just to clarify, in reality, it's kind of both. It is his driveway, and it's not a public way; it's a way in existence, which I know sounds like a technicality.
But he's been paying property taxes on it. It's his land. That's
Hang on, Mr. Petrosi. Hang on.
There's no way around the fact he's been paying taxes on it. He owns the land. He has to do all the maintenance, pay for services for it. I don't know how. I don't see how that could be kind of, even though it's a access point to his home. It's his land.
So point of order, I think this is a discussion for the next step in the process, right? That's going to come before us, the improvement to the.
Well, so what's in front of us now is we need to determine whether or not we want to approve this A&R. So I think it is relevant to that because two things would need to happen for that A&R to be approved. One would be that we as a board acknowledge that this is a way in existence, and secondly, that it is in its current condition is sufficient.
But through the
So-
chair, if this, just real quickly, if this is determined not to be an A&R, then there will be a next step for the improvement of the road. And Mr. Hildreth and Mr. Benson we can have that discussion then, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Mr. Chair, there's also another option that Mr. Petrosi could withdraw the application if he plans on submitting a petition to construct the paper street.
Okay.
So-
Mr. Petrosi, you've been patient. Go ahead.
Well, I don't want to get into the legal aspects of rights of ways and private ways, and, this has been, we wouldn't be here if we didn't think we had the rights to do what we're doing. But I will say that if the board were to vote tonight to just simply vote that it is a way in existence, we will submit we'll withdraw the A&R plan, and we will, tomorrow, John, I will be at the front door and submit the revised plans and an application to continue the public hearing that is next on your agenda for the 14th. Does that work for the board?
So, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Please do.
kind of a technical thing. If the board votes that this is a way in existence and then Mr. Petrosi withdraws the application, I don't know if your intent was to just have that on the record in the minutes, because once you submit an A&R again, they're going to have to make that determination again.
I don't know what the semantics are.
So, I mean, well, I guess what I'm saying is it may not matter if the board votes that this is a way in existence right now, because if you're going to withdraw the A&R, that determination is going to have to be made at another point anyway. You can't rely on that determination now for something in the future on another application, right? Because the determination is only to approve an A&R. It's not to make a determination as a whole.
You're right. I understand. I'm just weighing all of the factors here that are of benefit going forward. That's all. So, I'll withdraw the A&R plan, and we'll have a discussion with the revised plans or re-advertise for the next public hearing, and you'll have the same plans that were approved by the Conservation Commission and the reports from Beta, who reviewed the stormwater, and the board can make a decision relative to that plan. And hopefully it's a positive approval.
I don't, through the chair, I don't think that's what we are suggesting, right? Aren't we suggesting to come back with the improvement to the road first and get that done before the A&R?
Yeah, no, we wouldn't submit the A&R. We're going to submit a construction set of drawings.
Petition for roadway approval. That's all they would be submitting at the next meeting.
Yeah. We're not going to submit the A&R until you've given us approval and the road improvements have been constructed.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
So remind me, John, do we need to vote on that withdrawal, or is that Mr. Petrosi's formal withdrawal?
It would be, in absence of a clear answer, I would say it would be better to vote to withdraw, to allow the withdrawal without prejudice.
Okay.
If Mr. Petrosi is requesting a withdrawal without prejudice of the
Yes, and
application.
the only thing I would add is that the board would waive the fee when I resubmit.
I'm comfortable with that. Any objections to that?
The other option, sorry, Mr. Chair, is the board or the department may not cash the check. If you would rather just void that check, I mean, you submitted it today, so we haven't cashed it yet. We can void it, and then because it never happened.
If you haven't cashed it, we'll
I'm
pay it.
sure they haven't. I'll check tomorrow, but I'm almost positive they haven't.
Okay.
And one last question: do you have a meeting schedule planned for September other than the 14th, or is there other?
Oh, yeah.
14th and 28th.
Okay, so if we don't make the 14th, would be on the 28th.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to withdraw the application for A&R at Leonard Street without prejudice.
So moved. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Rob Benson, so
Benson.
moved.
Thank you. Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes, I vote to withdraw or allow him to withdraw with prejudice.
Without.
Jane?
I
Oh,
don't
sorry.
think I can vote on this.
What's that?
I don't think I can vote on this. Am I correct, John?
This one's new.
No, this is
This
brand
This
new.
was submitted today, so everyone can vote on this.
Okay, then I vote yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
And Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Petrosi, thanks for your flexibility. I do appreciate you continuing to work with us on this parcel, and we'll see you in a few
14th to the
weeks.
20th, yeah.
Yep.
John, one question. Do you need hard copies of the plans, and how many copies?
So for a petition to construct a paper street, it's not really set in stone. So I would say we'll take a look at your application for Buckland, and I would just do the same for that.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I'll see you tomorrow, maybe.
I'll be there 9 to 4.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Good night, everybody.
All right,
Good night.
Right.
Okay, so
Oh, by the way,
yes, go ahead.
we're gonna just continue the next, we're gonna just continue the next hearings until whenever, the 28th or 14th of September, right?
Yes, good call, and I had made a note of that to not forget to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, so the public hearing for Buckland Leonard Street to petition to construct a paper street. John, I'm assuming it probably just makes sense to put that in the September 14th, to continue it to September 14th.
Either September 14th, or if Mr. Petrosi doesn't plan on taking action, we can move it to the 28th. It's up to him.
So Mr. Petrosi, I mean,
All right,
I'm
let's-
comfortable either way. You've been flexible. We can be flexible with you, but I would just say that if we just continue it to the 28th, then if this A&R process, that's kind of your backup plan anyways. So
let's do the 28th. That gives us a
Okay.
little. time. I can
great, thank you.
All right,
And then
decision date would be sometime first week in October, I guess, right?
the October, who's fastest on the calendar here?
So either October 5th or later.
Okay. All right, so I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for Buckland Leonard Street stormwater management permit and petition to construct a paper street to September 28th with a decision of, let's just say, October 6th.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Discussion. We'll vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane? Oh,
And yes.
can Jane vote on continuing? John?
No.
No.
No. Sorry, Jane. You can't vote on this
My
one.
yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
So Rob cannot vote either? All right. Deb
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
and Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. So thank you, Lou. Appreciate your flexibility, and we'll
Okay.
probably see you on the 14th.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. So just one last thing that I wanted to speak to on future agenda items. One of the things that I think John Ferrari, that I really applaud him as a previous planning board chair, was enabling other board members to take specific hearings. And that's something that I would like to really push on, that we do as a board. One, selfishly, because it takes a little bit of the load off of the chair being me. And secondly, because I think that it's a great experience to, when you take ownership of chairing these specific hearings, it really gives you a little different flavor and perspective as to how all this unfolds and develops. So as we look at the September 14th meeting, there's a couple of carryovers and some relatively simple stuff that I don't think it would necessarily make sense to for someone else to take on. There is a open space plan, Deer Ridge Estates. It's an 8-lot open space subdivision between Lincoln Street and Cedar Street. That's down almost across from the state park, almost across from Carboni's. So I'd like to formally ask if one of you on the planning board would be willing to chair that specific hearing.
Not you, Muriel.
When does it start?
September 14th.
Just, yeah, I'm gonna pass on this one again because of the college things going on.
Okay. Rob, is that something that you would consider?
Yeah, I'll take it on.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And like I said, I think that just be forewarned, I'm going to continue to try and spread these out a little bit. You know, I'm going to continue. I mean, clearly I'm going to continue to be involved and certainly, but when we have a chance and we have something that appears to be, or that I'm not going to say it's straightforward because I don't know, because I haven't seen it yet, but I do think it's a great opportunity for other people to get involved here. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. And then, you know, we haven't, it's funny, we made a few changes. We previously had a number of kind of random topics on the other business component of the agenda. And as John and I were speaking last week, we felt that it makes sense to streamline that a little bit, simply because of the fact that if somebody from the public has interest, they really have no idea as to when and if we might discuss that. So it puts a lot of onus on them to continue to follow along, and technically they need to call in and listen to the entire hearing, every single meeting, if they had some opinion or questions or whatnot. So what that means is that if we have a specific item, administrative item that we would like to discuss, then we as a board or we would need to request that we have an additional item for discussion. We've done this before, whether it be trees on legacy farms, you know, things like Muriel requested on the master plan. So we don't need to have those requests tonight, but if there's something that you would like to add as an agenda item, then please reach out to either me, or actually me and John, and we can add that to the other business to discuss.
But just to summarize through the chair, are you saying we should reduce the amount of that administrative items that can be discussed at any time, right? We should be more
Correct.
focused on making an agenda item.
Yep, and it doesn't mean we don't want to discuss things. It just means we want to give a specific date and include it on the agenda. And then if we need to continue that discussion, we can, but we don't just want those floating items that have been in our other business category for, you know, in some cases a year or more.
Just for the record, Mr. Chair, I agree, and it wasn't a very efficiently used system anyway. It doesn't gain us anything, and I think that in the interest of transparency, it's much better for the public to do it the way you suggest.
Okay. All right. Any other correspondence or questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick note, I did run into Joe Regan, and we talked about those trees on legacy farms. He goes, oh yeah, I did research those, and they're on the private property, so they're not on town property.
Okay.
But
all right. Okay. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Rob.
Mary, second.
All right. Roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Edson, yes.
Deb?
Feinberg, yes.
And Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of August. Mary, good luck with getting your
daughter
Daughter, thank you. Daughter off to college, and we will all see you in a little over a month.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good
Right.
night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good job, Gary.
Bye.
Ron, are you in the office on Thursday?
No, just Tuesday.
Then I will not see you.
All right.
Have
Have
a
a
good
good night.